Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine War News update, first part there for the 31st of January 2025. I didn't manage to record one yesterday. I do have figures for the last few days, but I probably will leave that for a fill in the gaps short video at some point over the next 24 hours or so. I'm still abroad at the moment, just about to get a flight back to the UK. If you do hear things in the background, I apologise. There are trams going past, there's music playing, there's the incessant twittering on of Jonathan Fink and others in the background, and it's just, you know, there are some times in life where there's nothing you can do about that irritating itch that you have. You just want to somehow extract, I don't know, parts of your, maybe an entire limb to get rid of it. But anyway, so there are these background noises that you might hear. Okay, so we'll start with the Ukrainian general sub figures for the Russian losses for the day before all the usual caveats apply. Of course, you can find those caveats in the description to the video below. And Tim White says the final day of January and another 1,670 sacrifices on the bunker to the bunker Tsar in the last 24 hours mean that this has become the second worst ever month for Russia in terms of dead or disabled soldiers, surpassing November. So November was the worst month. This month was pretty bad as well, the second worst month. So this is, let's go through the figures. 1,670 personnel lost. That's obviously a very high number. 3 tanks is far below the daily average. 17 troop-carrying AFVs. Those are things like infantry fighting vehicles, armoured personnel carriers, mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, etc. 17 of those is just below the daily average. 33 artillery systems is a bit of a move upwards in that category, and that is above the daily average. We have one single multiple launch rocket system, and then we have 101 vehicles and fuel tanks. Massive number there, and of course that's because the Russians are using those vehicles as combat assets. So we are seeing the use of unarmored SUVs, of golf buggies, of motorcycles, etc., being used to ferry troops to the contact line, not necessarily to do attacks, although there have been some armoured columns of vehicles going on the attack involving these unarmored pieces of kit. And then there's a single piece of special equipment. So a pretty challenging day there for the Russians if they are accurate figures. And when we look at the Andrew Perpetua loss list, as I say, I've got 3 of these, but we'll only go through the 29th. So there is a gap. Obviously, this is the most recent one, but there is yesterday's still to come out. And you can see that the Ukrainians have lost pretty much on, there's a parity there between combat asset losses across the two sides there, but the Russians have lost vast numbers of trucks, all-terrain vehicles and civilian vehicles. So the overall ratio is closer to 2 to 1, even though there's parity for combat assets. And we'll look at the Russians because I think there's a couple of fairly high-value pieces of kit lost there. But we'll start as ever with the Ukrainian losses. We have quite a few bits of artillery, mainly old Soviet-era artillery. So the Gvozdika and the Mr. B there, damaged, range of these damaged, single Western one, M119, and some unknown howitzers there. Lancet's doing a lot of damage, and the Vandal drone's doing a lot of damage. So those two drones together cause a really high proportion of the damaged and destroyed kit for the Ukrainians. We have 5 tanks there. All of them Soviet-era tanks, none of them recent ones, so that's good news. But all of them destroyed, all 5. So we have T-64s, 4 of them T-64s and a single T-80. A couple of infantry fighting vehicles, including a damaged Bradley, captured M113, and then the rest M113s or VABs for the 6 APCs lost, and then Humvees and other Western-provided infantry mobility vehicles. Nothing too crazy, exactly the kind of equipment we've seen of late, although I would say there's a few more tanks and a few more pieces of artillery than we'd usually see. Going to the Russian losses, ignoring the huge numbers of civilian and ATV vehicles, I mean, goodness me, those quads are being lost at a fairly high pace. We've got 2 air defense pieces on this list today, a damaged Tor M2 and a damaged Book M3. So that's good news for the Ukrainians there. A couple of boats destroyed, an engineering vehicle, a couple of bits of artillery. We have 6 tanks, including 3 track garden sheds. So the Russians still building up their tanks into things that clearly aren't tanks. and all the usual questions we have surrounding why that would be, what that tells us. We have about a dozen infantry fighting vehicles, most of those BMP 1s, 2s, and 3s, and a few others thrown in, and then a couple of APCs and whatnots, BTRs. So essentially, the air defense vehicles there being the higher value pieces of kit, but just a huge mass of equipment the Russians are continuing to lose on a daily basis. I think, broadly speaking, that was replicated across the other 2 days. We'll just dip in. I won't granularly look at these, but if we look at the 28th, we have a list that looks pretty similar to me in terms of the ratio that we just saw. And then when we look at the 27th, you can see that it's again broadly similar. Quite a lot more artillery there, so maybe a Magyar montage videos dropped, and there's, I don't know, it looks to me about almost 20 pieces of artillery on the Russian loss list 2 days ago. But anyway, we won't go into the details of those. What other sources should we look at? Well, this is New York Times, as reported by Null Reports. North Korean troops have withdrawn from the front, as I reported previously, in Russia's Kursk region due to heavy losses, and that's per the New York Times. They haven't been seen for 2 weeks, with numbers halving in 3 months. They may return after training or if Russia finds new deployment methods. So that's a claim there. So interesting that the North Koreans are apparently absent from Kursk now. There are also claims that they are going to send in reinforcements from North Korea. That will obviously be a real challenge for the Ukrainians there. The Ukrainians are holding in Kursk. It is tough there, but considering the amount of pressure put on by the Russians and how much the Russians want that area back, I think the Ukrainians are doing a pretty good job there. It's very difficult in other places on the front line, of course. Now, here, just a bit of an anecdote from Null Reports. A Russian soldier reports, as you see this video, quote, a fiber optic drone hit directly into our Ural, so this is their truck. Wiring short-circuited and the Ural started moving. A sad moment. The sides were completely gone. Electronic warfare didn't help. Obviously, it's a fiber optic drone. There are some claims that there certain entities are finding out ways around fiber optics, but the main thing to take down a fiber optic drone is to shoot it out of the sky. Electronic warfare didn't help here. Anyway, the Russian says it happens often. The guys already started scavenging it, so you can see this big Ural truck taken out by fiber optic. And that is happening. It's just a claim that that's happening a lot. So good to see the Ukrainians using that, because the Russians have had a pretty big advantage in the use of fiber optic drones. And then this is claimed to be an archive. Others have claimed that it's not an archive, but I'm not sure when this happened. It's certainly, it's certainly wintertime, because there is no foliage on the trees. This is Leopard 2A4 taking out 5 armoured personnel vehicles. It's quite an incredible video. I'm going to pause it there, but yeah, so a single Leopard 2A4 taking out a column of 5 vehicles near Kyrgyzstan. It's doing the rounds at the moment. Just thought you might want to see that. That'll be linked in the description to the video below if you want to go and check that out. Right, we'll move on to distant strikes. And overnight, we had a typical night for Russians attacking the Ukrainians. The Ukrainian Air Force reported that there were 102 Shaheeds launched. 59 were shot down. Another 37 were suppressed by electronic warfare. So my basic maths, I've been trying to teach Jonathan Fink maths recently, and it turns out that he has a real issue. He's got his fingers in his ears again. Just the basics. Like he's very much erudite man, humanities. But when it comes to 2 plus 2, he's had some real issues. But anyway, 59 and 37. So what we do, Jonathan, is we add the tens first. So 50 and 30 is 80, and then we take the 9. That's a near 10. So that's 89. We add the 7, and we know our number bonds of numbers. So 7 and 9 is 16. So anyway, it just, well, you get the point. So there we are at 96, 4 still in the air. That leaves 2 being successful. So anywhere between 2 and 6 being successful there is a much better night for the Ukrainians, considering recently they've actually struggled to have really good interception rates. So good stuff there. I haven't heard any details about any of these drones hitting any particular targets. In terms of what the Ukrainians done, it was a very busy night for them, although we don't have that much detail now. But there were claims last night that the Ukrainians were attacking everywhere. So here, no report says Russian channels claim a massive drone attack on Rostov region underway. Air defense systems are active, trying to shoot down drones in Bataisk, Rostov-on-Don, and others like Gukovo and Krasny Sulin. I don't know where some of these places are. I don't know Bataisk, actually. But anyway, quite a lot of drones in the air. We have Tim White saying there were so many drones and explosions in Russia last night and this morning. It has emerged that Ukraine also managed to hit a refinery in Volgograd. Now, this is the big one that people are talking about. So we've seen that the refinery, the Ryazan refinery was the third biggest. Then we had one in Voronezh, I think it was. There was a fourth biggest. I forget if it is Voronezh or Bryansk. Well, no, because in Bryansk the next night we had the Druzhba oil pumping area, which is incredibly important for the supply of oil westwards. That was hit the night before, and then last night we've got the sixth biggest refinery. So really, we can add this game of oil refinery bingo, and you can see that the Ukrainians have really done a good job of taking out some of these places. Now, the question is, are these all taken out? Do they need to hit them again? We know that some of them are shut down. A couple of those that I've just mentioned, Ryazan has shut down, and that's a really big hit for the Russians. So anyway, we had this one in Volgograd hit. The Lukoil facility is the sixth biggest in Russia, producing gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, and more. So quite a few videos coming out, nothing with too much detail. The refinery produces, as mentioned, gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, and more. This hit on Volgograd is, of course, the latest in a series of recent strikes targeting refineries is much more effective and will really be hurting Russia now, says Tim White. No report says Ukrainian drones struck the Lukoil oil facility in Russia's Volgograd region. The facility processes 14 million tons of oil annually, producing gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Russia also claims to have downed 49 drones across 7 regions. So the Russians admitting that there were a lot of drones going about their business. What else do we have? So, General Staff admitting that Lukoil facility was hit, one of Russia's largest, and the attacks caused explosions in that key facility there. What else do we have? Taganrog, that's in the Rostov-on-Don region, just to the south of Ukraine. And if you go eastwards into Russia, so there are explosions in Taganrog. Air defense was working. And then we had Rostov region videos showing, I could show you that there were explosions in Rostov. But anyway, I don't need to show you that. Basically, there were a set of explosions right across Russia, with particular interest taken in that oil refinery. So hopefully more details will come out the further on we go. Now, moving on to other bits and pieces. The Troms Police District have detained a Norwegian-owned ship, the Silver Danian. Now, the ship is sailing between St. Petersburg and Murmansk. The entire crew on board were Russians, or are Russians. And it's suspected that this ship has been involved in serious damage to a fibre cable in the Baltic Sea between Latvia and Sweden. So these issues keep rumbling on. Ships are being detained. This is a continued vulnerability for Europe, a continued threat from Russia. There was internet has gone down in Russia, says Max24, with these places being having trouble. Now, apparently there was a cyber attack. If I got this detail, no, there's a cyber attack. I think might be either today or yesterday on Gazprom, and that's obviously going to be pretty useful for the Ukrainians there. So certainly quite a bit of cyber activity going on, being the Ukrainians are using that to their advantage. Now, there's been an explosion in a Rheinmetall plant in Spain, injuring 6. I don't know whether this has anything to do with Russia, but there have been a number of these explosions. There's one in BAE Systems, place in Wales. There's, I think, Pennsylvania and maybe elsewhere in America. That I think there may be 2 explosions at plants there. There was a Deal metal plant in Germany, and there have been these other ones as well. So this is not uncommon, and it wouldn't surprise me if this had something to do with Russia, but it may have also just been a complete accident. So 6 people injured, and a large fire spreading over 2,000 square meters. That reminds me, actually, I missed out, but there was a Russia on fire incident over quite a large distance as well. Yeah, so here it is. Yeah, I meant to have this earlier. It's a hostel's on fire in Moscow, but it's a 2,000 square meter fire with the roof starting to collapse. So that is another big Moscow fire. Hashtag Russia on fire. Really, really common occurrence there. But that reminded me because it was, yeah, same sort of size as this, though, 2,000 square meters at the Rheinmetall plant in Spain. That's a really big worry if the Russians are going, oh, here it is. I did have it. Had it in the wrong place. So anyway, hostiles on fire in Moscow. Fire is 2,000 square meters. And then finally, what else to say? Just thought I'd throw this one in. Suspected US to Russia weapons trafficker has been arrested in Kyrgyzstan. The criminal group began transporting weapons in April of 2022, shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion began, according to the Kyrgyz authorities. So good that that has been ended, and hopefully the person or people apprehended responsible for that apprehended. Anyway, that's enough from me. I really appreciate you hanging out and your patience with me over the last 10 days or so, where the output from my side of things has been somewhat inconsistent and looking very different to how it normally would. But hopefully you've got something out of seeing what we've been doing on a daily basis. There's a lot of stuff we couldn't show you due to sort of OPSEC and not from our point of view and our movements, but from the sorts of things we were seeing. And there's an awful lot of stuff I should be able to put together in the coming days, whilst also still trying to finish my 10 days in Ukraine video diary from the last time I went to Ukraine. So, hey, anyway, really appreciate your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm told all the time not to say this right at the end of the video, just as the video finishes and you don't have time to either like, subscribe, or share. So I'm just stringing this out for as long as possible so that you do indeed like, subscribe, and share. Somebody tells me that that's an important thing for YouTubers to do, or something like that. But yeah, speak soon. Toodle pips.